Ohanabi's family says we're super focused on Sean Desai and for good reason. We don't know what he will bring to the table. What expectations you guys have for Brian Johnson this year? I'll answer Johnson in a second. Desai is fascinating because we have no idea. Truly, we have no idea. The only little hints that we've gotten are his one press conference, which didn't tell us much, and then people like Nicholas Morrow and Terrell Edmonds saying that there's a lot to study. Like there's a lot of different plays. They're working on schemes and situational awareness, which I think is fascinating. You know, what do you do in this 3rd down and 1? What do you do in this 2-minute drill from the goal line? Stuff like that. I just don't know what we're going to get. If it's going to be too intricate to where people don't know where they are, and it takes a couple years to figure it out. We've seen that in the past. Will it be vanilla, just like Jonathan Gannon? Is it Jonathan Gannon's just reskin defense? I have no clue. Desai is going to be a fascinating person to watch because we're going to have no clue if it's good or not until week 1. Like the preseason will not tell us if it'll be so darn vanilla.
You're right. We're not going to know. And all of a sudden it's going to be like, all right, here we go. What are we going to get? We've talked about it before, though. I think both of us are very hyped up to see it. And he's saying all the right things. Desai, I mean, come on. If you listen to the interview, the press conference, it gets you hyped up to begin with. It's like, oh, yeah, this is the guy that you want leading your defense. So I'm excited about that. But again, to your point, it's like until we actually see it, it is just interesting, though. You talk about like the situational football, the defense, everything like that. I don't think you can stress enough. And I think Desai's mentioned a little bit as well, but like having smart players on the field with the IQ to understand every type of situation or as many as possible, because how many times do you win or lose games based on players kind of having to just obviously make plays, but in specific scenarios where it's like, you know what? It was an audible. It was kind of just a scrambling play, a crazy thing that happens. And there you go. There's a first down or not a first down. So I think there's a lot of big elements to that. And Desai stressed the importance too. So the fact that you've got guys like Morrow and several others that are coming out and saying, this is the most that I've learned in terms of just situational football and awareness and being taught the different levels of the game and kind of thinking it strategically. I think it's a great sign starting out. But again, it comes back to how does that translate whenever we start the season? So that's what we're excited to see.
Same could go for Brian Johnson. The second half of Ohanabi's family's question. What do you expect from Brian Johnson this year? I think it'll be a little less dramatic in terms of the change. I think there's a pretty good mold that was set there from Shane Steichen, and you got to figure Nick Sirianni was, part of spearheading that. And so it's not like you're going to have a complete change in terms of offensive philosophy. But, Johnson just talked a little bit about more what he wants to do. I think they might run the football a little bit more. I think back to some drives where they would just throw the entire time, not even run the football once or twice. And you're kind of like, okay, do we need to do this? Even though you have the options. Yeah. I think it'll be a balanced attack that feeds everybody and plays to Jalen Hurts' strengths. It's simple to say, but it really, the offense had no issues last year. Like there was the Colts game is the one game I can think about where the offense was a little bit iffy, and then maybe the Commander game that we lost. But Colts was really that one game where they just couldn't move the football. Other than that, and goodness gracious, it was 400 yards plus every single game. They were scoring 28 plus a game. I mean, it was great. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But Brian Johnson should be the guy to, continue to develop Hurts in whatever way that's supposed to be and make sure that everyone gets fed. I think that's his main job.
I agree. Yeah. It's interesting. And I might disagree with you a little bit, just on the fact that I kind of think that we're going to pass more than we did last year. I don't know. The thought would be, we ran the football, 65% of the time, something like that. So you got that. And then you've got the report of Fowler saying the Eagles think that Jalen's going to take this next level step, whatever that means. But if you really think that he's going to take that next step, I'm kind of leaning towards, okay, so we're probably going to pass more than we did last year, especially if defenses are going to come in and say, oh, the Eagles are going to run the football at least 65% of the time. So I'm leaning towards they're going to make a transition and maybe surprise teams where it's like, wait a second, they can run the football, but now when we're loading up on the box, they're just making us pay even more so. But I don't know. I would lean towards that. I think there's going to be some nuances, but still to your point, I agree that there's not going to be a huge drastic change. It may be a 5% change in terms of like how often you're running and passing. But I don't think it's going to be, all of a sudden we're a 65% passing team. That's not going to happen. This O-line is too good. These running backs are too good. There's a lot of other ways that we can beat you. So it's not going to be drastic, but I am interested to see because I think there's going to be small nuances that Brian Johnson kind of carves out in this offensive scheme that's going to surprise some teams. And truth be told, it'll probably be needed after a full off season, like we talked about, of defenses game planning on how to stop Jalen.
Joseph just said, "Do you think Jalen Hurts will play in the preseason?" I think he will. I'm all for people playing in the preseason. All too often, you see the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks of the season, a lot of rust, not just from one individual player, but from offenses as a whole. And I know you get reps at an 11 on 11s, but it's way different when you can actually be hit versus when you can't touch the quarterback and when you can't do a full tackle on a guy. I think he
Mhm.
plays. I think week one you give him a drive. I think week two you give him 2 or 3 drives or until he scores. And I think week three you sit him, and that's kind of what you do. That's what all teams have done, especially with the shortened preseason schedule now, where they don't play week 4 now it's week 3. But that's how I would do it. You don't have to do anything crazy. But
Right.
Rodgers likes to play a little bit in the preseason. Most of these guys like to get out there and get a little bit of live action. That way, week one at the Patriots, you're not surprised by anything.
Yes, yeah, we definitely don't wanna I mean, in my opinion, we don't wanna walk into Foxborough and be like, "Oh, we haven't had any real live action until just now." So, I agree, and I would I don't know, I wouldn't think that anyone, Jalen, the coaches, anyone would be saying, let's not. Let's just wait until the regular season." Again, injuries can happen whenever, and I'm, yes, all for protect the players until the regular season, but if you're doing your job the way you're supposed to, you get him out there for a drive, maybe 2, like you said. It's not gonna be crazy amounts of playing time, but just shake off the rust, get
Yeah.
ready to go, then you're prepared for week 1.
And injuries happen all the time, and it's super frustrating when you get injured in the preseason, but it's always a dumb argument. Like, if he didn't play in the preseason, then he's for sure wouldn't be injured in the regular season, which doesn't make sense because you could
Right.
go vice versa. If he plays in the preseason, then he might get hurt in the regular season, or he might not. It just if you're going to get hurt, you're going to get hurt. There's nothing you can do about it, and it sucks. It's no fun. We knock on wood. We pray. We hope that it's not going to have an issue. But this whole idea of protecting people by not playing them at all is a little ridiculous. Sure, maybe you don't play Jason Kelsey in the preseason because he's a little older, a little more wear and tear. That's fine, but these guys are going to get a couple of snaps, and honestly, I have no issue with that. No Madden curse this year, says Ohana Means Family. No, although the Madden curse has kind of been broken, it's not real anymore. But yeah, I mean,
True.
Josh Allen deserves it. Let's be real. Josh Allen is one of the top 5 elite quarterbacks in the league. He's a household name, a name brand right now. He's been doing it for a little longer than Jalen Hurts. Have your time in the sun. I think the deluxe cover looks awesome with him jumping into the stands. Hurts will be the cover guy next year if he plays well. I mean, it's all but guaranteed. I mean, the guy is becoming a national brand in and of himself. So it's not like he got robbed of it and will never have a chance again. If Hurts does what he did this past season in 2023, he's the Madden 2025 cover, unless they go with Madden because it's 25. But he will be a cover athlete, and that's cool. It's fine. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't, I don't freak out about it either way. But
Yeah.
congrats to Josh Allen. Josh Allen is great. He's a great quarterback. I think there are a lot of GMs that would take Josh Allen over Jalen Hurts right now. If you had to flip a coin
Yeah, yeah.
today, maybe. Although you can make the argument that Hurts protects the ball better. But I mean, listen, we're talking about 1A, 1B, or 1A.1 and 1A.2. They're both fantastic. Congrats to Josh Allen. I want to bring up this idea of Jalen Hurts, because we both talked about this a little bit earlier as we start the show and people start kind of filing in right now. There are these reports saying that he's expecting to be better. Jeremy Fowler had a fascinating one of those little blurbs on SportsCenter or Get Up where it doesn't give you a lot of details, but he essentially says, here's what I've heard. And he basically heard that right now, Jalen Hurts has dramatically improved from where he was at last year. He's looking to be better than where he was at from last year. And I'm just wondering, how much better can the guy be? Because you hear that report, you go, okay, good. Then you go, what's he going to get better at? We all saw the stat on Twitter where he was the number 1 pocket passer in the league last year. He was one of the best deep ball throwers in the league. Lowest check down rate, meaning he's hitting people further from the line of scrimmage. Where's the
Mhm.
improvement for this guy? I mean, yeah, you can get better every year, but how much better can you actually get?
That's that's a great question. I think that's what a lot of us are asking, because I had the same thought. Like, as soon as you see it, it's like, okay, cool. That's exciting because there's a potential there. But then, yeah, you go back through the stats and the numbers and the tape and everything, and you're like, where? To your point, where are we going to find it? Now, granted, you could always improve, and Jalen would be the first one to say that. He's like, the grind
Yeah.
never stops. It's always continuing to climb. But yeah, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, where, especially within like the comment that Fowler made was they expected to become an elite pocket passer type of quarterback. And of all things, or almost of all things, like the pocket passing, he led the league in. And so if you look at the accuracy, the numbers and everything there, I mean, there's not a whole lot else. And, we can probably, if you want to, we can get into Chris Sims' comments,
Oh,
because I know
gosh.
that you and I both have covered it. We've had people that, nonstop comments, and what does Chris know? And obviously he's a known Jalen hater, so he's going to just always say that. But I'm sorry, where do you want to nitpick? Like, this whole thought of Jalen somehow had the Super Bowl just gifted to him in terms of the Chiefs just loading the box at every single down, saying, "Oh, we dare you to pass it on us. We dare you to hurt us by throwing the football." Is ridiculous. Like, sure, he had some looks, but it's also a lot of the throws. I mean, go back and look at all of those throws in the Super Bowl that he made. It's not like, oh yeah, any average quarterback should just sit back there and do that. So yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I'm surprised. I'm shocked by those comments because it is hard to read between the lines and figure out what they're talking about. I mean, maybe to the point of there's a little bit more progression, or I'm thinking possibly like pre-snap, but then you still go back to like, well, what does that mean in terms of a pocket passer, an elite pocket pass? Because that to me sounds like it's during live action. It's not pre-snap.
Right.
I don't know. I'm honestly at a loss. So I can't figure it out.
It doesn't make sense. Pre-snap would make sense, though. You'd expect your quarterback to get better pre-snap year in and year out. I mean, Peyton Manning got better every single year, and he's one of the best to ever do it. The Sims argument, I think you did the little video clip that I did today, was bizarre, where he said, well, Hurts played well, but different quarterback against that Chiefs defense would have thrown for 500 yards instead of 342. And you're just like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? Did we watch the same game? He only had so many drives, and each drive was basically a score minus the fumble, which people love to rip him for and say that that's the reason that we lost. Just ridiculous, because it's not. Defense. Darius Slade quote tweeted that today and said it was our fault. We gave up 35 points on defense. So it's fascinating. I'll be very curious to see what Hurts does this season. We don't talk about it a lot, but the pressure is monumental for him. I mean, think of what the pressure was for Carson Wentz after 2017, and he was coming after an injury. Jalen Hurts is not coming off an injury. The expectation for Carson Wentz was he will be, again, an MVP candidate. He's the next Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, great elite quarterback, and he couldn't live up to it. Now, Jalen has a way different overall team around him. You can argue if Wentz would have had it in 2018, it could have been a little bit different, despite the fact Wentz was playing well towards the end there until Foles had to come in. But I do wonder what the expectations are going to be like for him going into 2023. And if he is as good as last year, will people be upset because he's not better? If he's slightly worse and they only win 11 games but still win the division, will people be upset? That's going to be fascinating to me to see how it kind of molds as this offseason kind of kicks into full gear once we get to training camp. And really, once you get into the meat of that schedule, which we know is very difficult. Like, what are people going to do if Hurts, struggles a little bit in some of these games and isn't lights out, 400 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no picks every single week? It's going to be a quick turn, and it'll get ugly, and it'll be frustrating, in my opinion.
It will. It'll be a little frustrating, and I think that we've talked about this a little bit before. It's like it wouldn't shock me if we see a little bit of a dip, especially maybe perhaps early in the season, because you're giving teams an entire offseason to game plan, to watch film, to figure out what does Jalen do well and what does he not. Granted, I would argue that's a little difficult to try to figure out what he can't do. But I mean, even Chris Sims, when we go back to that, he even said, he's like, he never makes a wrong decision. So I don't understand the whole comment, but to get off of Chris Sims and stop talking about that. But still, he even recognizes, and I think everyone recognizes, he is an incredible leader, and he makes almost always the right decision. So to see him take the next step, yes, he's going to have to. And that's where I think it's that pre-snap, because I think the defenses are going to see where can we possibly get a very slight edge on Jalen. But if he recognizes it pre-snap, then it's, hey, and it's an audible out, it's a change the play, it's whatever you can do there. But I think maybe early on you see a little bit of a roadblock, but in terms of it facing adversity, I mean, we all know, like, this guy's different. Like he there's no one like Jalen Hurts. And so the reason that he is so good is because he's different and he can fight through that adversity. So I won't be down on him. I won't be, I'll be a little upset, but I won't be like depressed or, saying, oh, the sky is falling, this season's over. If a game or two in, it's like, man, this is not the same Jalen that we've seen. It's maybe just some adjustments that are going to take place, but I'm excited to see what they do, because I don't think that this team's going to have too many issues. I mean, especially with the way the schedule starts out. Now, granted, you'd made the point of it is a very difficult schedule. Yeah. So you got to get some momentum early, but I still, I've got total faith in Jalen. I think everybody does.